Start. Well, I'm really pleased the president moved so rapidly to approve the governor's request for a emergency declaration of this magnitude. The delegation had a conference call this morning with the national head of FEMA, Peter Gaynor. He's the national administrator, along with Mike O'Hare, who is our Region 10 coordinator, and Dolph Demont, who's leading FEMA's response effort to Oregon. As you know, the way these work, the locals ask the state for assistance. The state then applies to the federal government, and the federal government makes the decision, is in a supporting role for the state. In this case, with the major disaster declaration, it opens the doors to a lot more assistance. And I want to walk through a couple of things. The most important takeaway from this morning was people who have been adversely affected wherever you are in the state of Oregon, or if Washington gets a similar designation, but certainly in Oregon, you need to get a hold of FEMA right away and register. You can call 1-800-621-3362, or you can go online at disasterassistance.gov. That is what you need to do right away. Then FEMA will reach out immediately and begin providing assistance. You also need to contact your insurance agent to begin the work on claims, because a lot of the assistance that will come from the federal government will backstop what you don't get from insurance. If you lack housing today and you need assistance, it is the state of Oregon who has the state housing plan, and they have the responsibility and the plan in place to work with our local agencies to provide housing. There is a three number call you can make to 211. If you need housing assistance in an emergency situation, 211 will get you through to the state of Oregon. But you can also call the FEMA number and get assistance as well. In terms of housing, FEMA has identified all available hotel rooms and other housing situations that are available for people. They have that list. So again, going through FEMA is the best way to get access to housing. We got clarification today that working with the Red Cross and the state, they coordinate the housing. That you don't have to wait for, we heard vouchers. There are no such things as housing vouchers. This is all taken care of without that. And so the key is to work with your local emergency coordinators and to go straight through to this 800-621-3362 number, or as I say, dial 211, and that will get you into the state for emergency assistance as well. The state, during the COVID situation, had already been given the authority to provide for housing. And so they have that ability, according to FEMA, to register people and to have pre-approval for housing in a disaster. Again, they have full recognition of what's available and not. And again, it works, the federal government backstops the state. They have a partnership with the State Emergency Operations Center, and the state has a housing plan in place. I hope they make that more publicly available. And it would be my hope that the state would be more personally available in Southern Oregon. That was one of the things we heard over the weekend when we toured the facilities down there, and the terrible devastation and loss of houses and all. So I think that's the big takeaway for me today. There is housing available. There is support available. We now have the national declaration, and FEMA will be showing up in Oregon very, very soon. In a bigger way. They also, by the way, can provide support for local communities. I know the mayor of Phoenix was very concerned about loss of revenue. If your whole community's been wiped out, you're not getting funds, for example, from water payments. There is a disaster loan program for public entities to provide backstop revenue for local communities. The state needs to apply for that, which has not happened yet, but I'm sure will in the coming days. And that will help the public entities. The federal support through FEMA does include access to individuals to replace housing units and other lost items. But again, that has to be worked through on an individual case-by-case basis. And that generally follows after insurance, but there is emergency support available. I think that pretty much covers the main items from the conference call with FEMA today. And with that, I'd be happy to try and address any questions you all may have. So if you just unmute, we don't have the ability to pick and choose here. So I guess they could raise their hands, right, Molly? That might be a way to do this.
Are you
It
guys
looks like you can click on the right and raise your hand, and then I could.
I don't know if we have the version you have for the committee, so I don't know if they can have that capabilities.
All right. Well,
Um,
then just unmute and we'll try and manage it that way.
Hi, Greg. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Who's this?
All right. So we had a couple callers this morning to our newsroom asking when the federal relief came in. They were thinking that that Governor Brown and also our senators and you were dragging your feet in order to well, in the process of getting federal help.
Yeah.
I said it didn't seem like that, but obviously we'd like to have a quote from you because a couple people, at least in our demographic, are wondering, I guess, what took so long from their point of view. I don't think that's the case, but what would you say to someone who would be asking that question?
Yeah, no, that's facts are a good thing, and the facts of the matter are the federal government's responded to this in a very rapid way. And in fact, the governor only asked for the emergency declaration on Monday afternoon, and the president turned it by 5 to 6 o'clock yesterday. And the fund, they've been in concert all along, state and federal. Remember, this is predominantly a state emergency management situation. It's governed through your local emergency managers. The county levels work with the state emergency management office. They then say, what else do we need? And that's where the federal government provides backstop and support. Now with this major disaster declaration, the president approved in less than 24 hours, you'll see additional FEMA presence and additional resources that include cost shares that could reach 90% for individuals. They also will have hazardous teams come in. Corps of Engineers is already involved and will be providing assistance. And of course, the Department of Environmental Quality from the state will have to do their analysis. But the Corps of Engineers can come in now and start providing technical and other support. We've got a lot of debris that's going to have to be dealt with, removed safely, and taken off site to appropriate locations for disposal. That's all got to happen at the same time that they're working with insurance and then other support. So there's sort of the emergency triage piece that we've been going through during these fires. Feds, state, Red Cross, local have all been in great partnership, and there's obviously a lot more work to be done.
Thank you, Congressman. And I do have a quick follow-up. I'm not sure if you have specific numbers, but do you know about how many federal workers, responders are here in Oregon working on the fires, and how many we're bringing in now with this new effort?
You know, I don't. We can try and get that answer. We have another conference call with the delegation and the Region 10, and hopefully the state will be on this one tomorrow to get a further update with the congressional delegation. The state and federal will try and get that number. But you will see an increased presence. I've recommended that they come, especially down to Southern Oregon, but certainly we know statewide there are other places they're going to be involved in, but certainly with the horrible losses in Phoenix and Talent, and of course in Gates and those areas, Detroit. But we're up to what, 2,700 units now, I think, lost in Medford area, Greater Jackson County, I'll say, Phoenix Talent specifically. You'll see their presence on the ground. They're moving right now to come down.
Thanks, Congressman. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Other questions?
Congressman, anything more that you want to do? You've already done a lot.
Yeah, I think they've moved rapidly. And again, the county needs to flow up to the state. State then asks the feds for help. The Red Cross, other agencies are involved. I think the good news, the good takeaway is this system will start to work right away now that we've got the national disaster in place. That's why getting people to register is essential. The sooner they do that, the sooner they'll get their response and the help. Nobody should be sleeping in a car in a parking lot. There is housing available. You can dial 211 to access it, or this 800 number from FEMA to access help. The money is there. There is no issue with not enough money. The head of FEMA told us they have $32 billion right today available for disasters. Now, obviously, they're dealing with a hurricane, and there are other ones in the country, but a lack of resources is not an issue. There is no lack of authority here to deal with people who need housing. So the money's there, the ability's there. Clearly, especially in Southern Oregon, we may have a capacity issue they'll have to work around, but right now that did not seem to be a problem. And they're dealing with 3,225 people as of this morning statewide in congregate living situations. They want to, reduce that number as quickly as possible, so each individual or family gets a home of their own, if you will, a place to live, at least their own hotel room, their own apartment, whatever that situation is. So they've done the inventory, they know what's available, they're ready to move people into non-congregate living situations. And as we work in this first phase, I would say, or perhaps second, the next phase, of course, will be removal of debris and the rebuild, and that's going to take a while, I think we all recognize.
Thank you.
Congressman, we have a question from Holly with the Herald and News. She's not able to unmute right now, but her question is, what funding will be available for Klamath and Lake counties? And then why were people not alerted to evacuation levels in Phoenix until it was too late?
Yeah, I don't know about the last part in that timeline. It seems like the fire moved very, very rapidly, and they got people out of there in pretty amazing order. But I don't know the specifics in terms of when notices went out and all. But I can tell you that the same emergency declaration that applies nationwide or statewide should provide assistance for losses in Klamath County, depending upon their severity. We've been watching the Paisley fire, the one outside of Paisley rumbling around out there, and the other fire in Klamath. So in Klamath County, we've been watching one in Lake County, we've watched one in Klamath County, we've been in touch with local elected officials and with the Forest Service and BLM. So we're keeping an eye on those as well. But as losses occur there or wherever they are in the state, there will be help depending upon the magnitude and severity and type.
Congressman, this is Blakely McHugh with NBC5 News down in Medford. A question for you. Has the state of Oregon had to request assistance from FEMA before? And if so, when did that happen?
Yeah, no, they requested assistance earlier as the fires were breaking out to provide the emergency relief. That was granted too right away. So there's various levels of support that has already come in. And again, the Region 10 and the emergency office from the state have a partnership. They work literally shoulder to shoulder. They have teams that are working together, and of course, virtually as well. And so those requests, which the delegation supported, were turned around in rapid time. We've had no complaints about any of that.
Got it. Thank you. And second question, just what is your personal reaction to the fires that have gone on in Oregon and especially in Phoenix, Talent area, since that's where we're located?
Yeah, I visited the Phoenix and Talent and the Expo Center, met with local officials during that tour, and people who had been affected. It is just jarring. It is stunning to see the magnitude of the loss. It's hard to conceive the heat that must have been there, and just the magnitude. The poorest of the poor took the biggest hit. If you think about people that were living in those mobile home parks or in the low-income housing, some of which had just been built, they were starting with not a lot. And in some cases, I'm sure some of those mobile homes probably couldn't be insured, and they've lost what little they had, and they're going to need enormous assistance going forward. And that's why the president turning around this request from the governor within 24 hours opens the door to the kind of individual relief that otherwise might not be there. But given the magnitude of this, our hearts and prayers are with these folks. We met with a few of them at the Expo Center, and my own personal view was that people are still in a state of shock and disbelief. There will be real agony going forward and real heartbreak. And we saw some people looking at what was left of what was once their home. and there's not much. The fire was so hot and so vicious, not much is left behind. The thing of concern is that firefighters told us be careful out there because of the toxicity of the air and the fumes around these fire sites. You can have toxic, cancer-causing emissions coming out of the ground for some time to come. And so that's why it's important that we get the environmental analysis done right away, get the cleanup done as soon as possible, and begin the rebuild process.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Congressman Deborah Gill with KPTV in Portland. It sounds like it's a lot of good news here. Obviously, the devastation part of it is not. Is there anything moving forward that's going to keep you up at night? Do you foresee anything negative or that could go wrong with this, or something you're worried about still moving forward?
Yeah, no, not in terms of the working together and getting things out there and the support. I think what keeps me up at night is knowing just how long and painful a recovery process this will be, because they've got to do the environmental analysis. They have to do the work there before they can clean things out. But with this declaration, we do know that the Corps of Engineers, FEMA, the state, everybody's going to be involved, and they're going to move as rapidly as they can. The thing to keep in mind is some of these mobile home parks are now in a floodplain. And while they were grandfathered before, there is some discussion that many of those units will not be able to be replaced now that they've been destroyed because they're in the floodplain, and that's fairly new mapping in Phoenix. So in Jackson County in 2018, there were 400 housing units constructed that entire year in all of Jackson County. We just lost 2,700 housing units. You think about trying to rebuild, it is going to take a while, especially right now with everything else, COVID and everything else going on. So that's what really bothers me, is that people are going to be displaced for some time to come. It's just the way it's going to be, tragically, and it will take a while. Just like you can see the heat that must have been.
Since that's where we're located.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There's nobody else. We'll wrap this up, but the more you all can help get these numbers out, the better. Because that's what FEMA told us, is get people to call that number or go online and sign up. That begins the process for them individually. The 211 is more like the emergency housing number, but we really need all Oregonians who are displaced or affected by the fire to register with FEMA. That begins their case and their process. And the sooner they do that, the sooner the help will begin to flow. So the 1-800-621-3362 is something something people who have been adversely affected should sign up for right away. Make that call this morning or go online at disasterassistance.gov. There's no space, by the way, between disaster and assistance. It's disasterassistance.gov.
Congressman, I know you've got to go in just a moment. This is Betsy Hammond at the Oregonian. You said that you had been in touch with officials down in the Lake and Klamath areas about the Phoenix fire. Can you share new details with us? What they've told you is the latest in terms of the risk that's going on as that continues to burn?
Yeah, so let me clear up. The Phoenix fire is actually in Jackson County. It's the Alameda fire and Berrigan, I think the two burned together. The ones over in Klamath and Jackson are two separate fires. They were protecting Paisley. The winds were kind of shifting around. The last I've heard is that Paisley was okay, but we've talked to the Forest Service, fire crews. The person that heads that up, they felt like they had the assets and they got more than what they thought they were going to get, and quicker. So they felt like they had the crews they needed. And I don't have an update this morning on the Klamath fire, but the one over in Lake County, at one point it was really threatening Paisley, and then they got it kind of corralled, and then they were concerned it had shifted and was going to make a run toward Lakeview, but it sounds like they've got it more under control today. But I haven't checked with the Forest Service this morning.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Well, thank you all for participating in this. And again, the more we can get this number out, sooner Oregonians will get help, and we'll stay on it. So thank you.